Good afternoon and welcome to The Rundown. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 18th of August. A flu shot doesn't always protect you, but amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, it is more important than ever. The UNC-Chapel Hill fall semester is going online amidst the COVID-19 outbreaks, just 1 week into classes. Good news, some people will get new stimulus checks as soon as this month. Young Democrats of Maryland leader found dead in Washington. And a mural honoring the 5-year-old boy who was shot and killed while riding his bike. Jeffrey Epstein showed off a 14-year-old victim to Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Lawsuit confirms. And lastly, Melania Trump repeatedly rejects the president's attempt to hold hands. Let's get to the news. Getting a flu vaccine this year is even more important than usual because of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to public health officials. Producers are boosting supplies for the flu vaccines this year to meet what they expect will be higher demand. CVS stores have the flu vaccine in stock, and vaccines are available as of Monday at Walgreens. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that everyone 6 months and older get a flu vaccine each year. The agency did not respond to a request for comment about this year's situation. The CDC recommends people get a flu shot vaccine by the end of October because it takes a few weeks for the vaccine to become fully protective, but encourages people to get vaccinated later than not at all. It's hard to know how the flu will interact with COVID-19. The flu season has been mild in the southern hemisphere, which is usually 6 months ahead of the US. It isn't clear whether that's because the flu strain circulating this year or because of the same public health measures that prevented COVID-19, masks, social distancing, and frequently washing of hands, also stops flu outbreaks. In 2018 and 19, there were about 490,000 people hospitalized because of the flu, and more than 35,000 deaths in what was considered a moderate year for the flu. Since March, more than 345,000 Americans have been hospitalized and over 170,000 have died from COVID-19. Hey, welcome once again to The Rundown. I am Captivating Christian, and thank you all for popping in. And this is where I like to give my personal commentary on these stories of this afternoon. But before we get into that, anybody who's new, welcome to the channel. Hopefully you like, share, and subscribe. And definitely if you want to be the representative of the day is someone who likes and shares the commentary. So if you want to be the representative of the day, make sure you do that. Anyway, getting right along. So let's get into this first story. The first particular story we're going to get into, of course, is the flu. All right, so the flu season is coming up upon us, and we are already dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. The health department officials are pushing people to make sure that they keep up with their flu shots and get their flu shots this season. However, for those of us who, really don't do the flu shot for whatever particular reason, the flu itself has not really been a big issue, and they are kind of attesting it to maybe the coronavirus pandemic and people are actually wearing masks social distancing, and washing their hands. So you actually, although we're trying to keep the coronavirus at bay, we may actually be helping keeping the rise in the flu as well, which is a great thing. But for those of you who do take your flu shots every year, those of you who are older and have conditions where in which you kind of make sure you are protected, please do so. And that's really all I have for that one. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill on Monday became the first major college to pivot to online classes after reopening in person. The reversal took about 1 week. Since the university started courses in person on August 10th, it has reported at least 4 clusters of outbreaks of the COVID-19 in the students' living spaces. Undergraduate courses will go remote on Wednesday, and the university said that it will reduce the density in its dorms. The UNC was one of the first and largest universities to bring students back on campus for in-person classes. It was under close scrutiny for other institutes planning to resume face-to-face instructions this month or next. Many universities have had plans on bringing students back for the fall semester. They have canceled or heavily modified those plans in recent weeks. The UNC-Chapel Hill campus reported 130 student cases in the last week, significant increase from 10 cases it reported on campus in the week leading up to the start of classes. Many students had already moved into their residential halls, and they were likely to move out. We expected the majority of our current undergraduate residential students to change their residential plans for the fall. Reaction to the outbreak was swift, especially within the UNC community. The dean of the university's School of Public Health early Monday had called for a switch to remote operations. After only 1 week of campus operations, with growing numbers of clusters and insufficient control over the off-campus behavior of students and others, it is time for an off-ramp. We have tried to make this work, but it is not working. And all right, here we are with the second story. Second story dealing with the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Um, Amidst reopening, just within a week, they went from coronavirus cases from 10 cases to over 130 students. Because they cannot necessarily, although they have guidelines for the students, they can't control where the students go once the academic day is done, right? So here is my issue with that altogether. And it's on both sides. As far as the school dealing academically, just are you starving for money that bad that you're going to actually bring the students back and not really have a full-fledged plan to contain the students where in which they do not, because you can't, because obviously you cannot police them 24/7 to ensure that they stay on campus or stay, within their dorm perimeters or campus perimeters. You cannot do that. So the idea of you opening back up with kind of these guidelines and expecting these young adults, quote unquote, to adhere to them is kind of ridiculous. And I feel no sympathy for the 130 people, nor do I feel any sympathy for the faculty, because at this point you are all older, and kind of should be able to govern yourselves or make decisions where in which they're a little more thought driven instead of just reactionary. However, on the side of elementary school, grade school children, that's a little different. That's harder to kind of, uh, make sure they're following, and, you got to keep reinforcing. And for this to be a problem with, people ushering into adulthood is kind of sad and really ridiculous. But there you have it. You're left with 130 students, and that's 130 students times how many times? Yeah, times how many times? Try to say that 3 times fast. They have come in contact with someone else, either it be a family member or, so on and so forth. So, we always look at the number and just say, oh, that's just 130 people. Yeah, but 130 people times however many people those people have come in contact with, which we do not know. It's almost like when people talk about sexually transmitted diseases. It's not that, you just slept with that one person and God forbid you got that sexually transmitted disease, but it's like, how many people have that person slept with? And then, on top of that, and you start counting and the numbers start to grow. So, 130 people could easily be close to 1,000 people or even more. So, you have to be mindful of that. And I think as educators, definitely at that level, that should have definitely been more considered than, oops, this is not working, we're just going to do remote learning. It's ridiculous for the amount of money that you pay in tuition, right? Hey, this is Captivating Christian here to remind you to tune in to Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. You never know what you might get. The U.S. Senate decided to head out for its annual August recess a few days ago, having made no progress on the passage of a bill that the body was racing to try and finish before vacation time. If you've been following along with the bill, it was the HILLS Act, a new coronavirus relief package that was filled with much needed stimulus elements like funding for most Americans to get the new stimulus checks. What should have been an easy excuse for both major parties to come together, though devoted into the particular gridlock where both sides talk past each other and nothing gets done. In this case, millions of Americans were left watching their representatives head out for vacation without having approved the second round of stimulus checks that everybody assumes would be on their way soon. The first part of the coronavirus stimulus bill that Congress passed way back at the end of March was funding which included the support for the first wave of stimulus checks. And when you got your check, you were supposed to have included the little extra money. If you had children, you got $500 for each eligible child under the age of 17. Some Americans did not receive that money for their children and checks to cover the missing amount of what the IRS has said is being sent out over the next couple of months. According to the IRS, the catch-up payments, as tax agencies refer to the money that you were supposed to have already gotten, will be issued in mid-October. IRS employees have been working non-stop to deliver more than 160 million economic impact payments in record time. So let's talk about this story a little bit. Alright, so we have the stimulus check. And yes, it may be good news for some, but however, the article really talks about a little dibble back into the old stimulus as well as the new. So we'll talk about the old stimulus really quickly. There was an additional bracket for the old stimulus check that you received back in March, that if you had a child or for every child, you get an additional $500. Now, all of that has not been divvied out yet to all of America. So those of you who have children and filed, your child when you filed your taxes either last year or however far back they've gone to give people this stimulus relief, if you haven't received it, you will still be receiving that, and that should get to a lot of Americans around mid-October. However, on the other end of that, Congress is on vacay until September, so we don't necessarily know if the commissioner did say they were talking about the new stimulus check reliefs for Americans during this pandemic. However, we don't necessarily know if Congress will just do a vote while they're on vacation and the president will sign it and it'll all be said and done, or if they're just holding out as long as they can to ensure that they have a good favorable view come November towards the election. So, and that's sad that you can play around with the American people who are suffering the most like this. But that's what happens when you're able to sit back and make money for 3-4 years off the backs of the working people by, cutting taxes for the rich and big businesses, while exactly the people that work the business actually wind up making no money at all. So we'll see how this goes and if it pays off for the Republican administration in November. And be sure to join Jay Wilson, Rebel Sun, The Official Campaign, Conscious TV, and Captivating Christian this and every Thursday at 6:45 Central Standard Time, 7:45 Eastern Standard Time for the Gentleman's Panel, where we are not afraid to go there and discuss an array of topics. See you there. The president of the Young Democrats of Maryland was found dead in Washington, D.C., more than a week after he went missing in Maryland. The Prince George's County Police announced the death of Joseph Kitchen on Sunday night, a day after the department had asked the public's help in locating him. Kitchen, age 34, had been missing since August 8th, when he was last seen at Sandy Point State Park in Annapolis, which is 37 miles east of Washington. We are saddened to learn of the tragic and untimely passing of Joseph Kitchen, the Young Democrats of America said in a Twitter post on Sunday night. Joseph always pushed the YDA to live up to its values and was someone who was not satisfied with accepting the status quo. His passion will be deeply missed. The Young Democrats group, which is open to registered Democrats who are less than 36 years old, had posted a missing persons flyer to seek information about Kitchen for his parents and brother. The Maryland Democratic Party also expressed their condolences on Twitter, saying Kitchens was a kind heart that had impacted so many. The Metropolitan Police Department in Washington is leading the investigations into his death. And this particular story is pretty sad, with the death of the presidents for the Young Democrats of Maryland, Joseph Kitchens. He was missing since August 8th. The Young Democrats had reached out via Twitter to see if they can find some answers for his family, and they recently discovered his body in Washington, D.C. So it's a lot of course, unanswered questions as to what happened. It's being investigated, so there's no other information I can give at this moment. But if I do come across them, I will, of course, be the first to drop some breaking news. It is just unfortunate. Very young man, very promising, very politically driven. And it's really unfortunate, especially in this time where we need the voice of the people, and young people at that, to motivate them to see a change and want difference. There is always this push of, oh, my vote doesn't count, my vote doesn't count. And it is always important and vital to have young people push back on that notion, to other young people, and show them that no, your vote does count. Your voice is your vote, and you have to use it. And it's yours. So with that, our thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and we hope we get answers soon on this tragic loss of life. A North Carolina man took it upon himself to memorialize 5-year-old Cannon Hannett, who was tragically shot and killed last weekend. The mural read, "Cannon Life Matters." On Friday, just one day after Cannon's funeral, Skeeter Tulloch painted a mural in memory of the 5-year-old. Due to the fear of public scrutiny, Tulloch did not want to disclose the street name or where the mural was placed. Tulloch said in the next couple of days he plans to go over the mural with another layer of bright colored paint. Since Cannon's death, his story has gained nationwide attention. People across the world have been using several hashtags with Cannon's name, sending prayers, words of encouragement, and even monetary donations. Darius Simmons, age 25, is in jail on no bond, facing first-degree murder charges. Nearly a week later, the Wilson Police Department had not released any information regarding a motive. Now, this particular story is also sad and unfortunate, but I think people miss the mark on the purpose of one movement or a call for justice compared to another. So let me try to shine some light or educate those who may feel one way or the other. All right, so this 5-year-old young boy was brutally murdered in front of his house while riding his bike by this 25-year-old black man. Unfortunate, sad, totally uncalled for. Any life lost is a huge thing. But a North Carolina man took it upon himself to have a mural for the young man that said, "Cannon Life Matters." Now, of course, Cannon Life matters and mattered, but I think the point is always missed with saying something like that and Black Lives Matter. The reason why you don't need to say Cannon Life Matters is because that person was apprehended, charged, and is facing court as we speak. He is in jail. There has been no grand jury waiting to even figure out if this person is gonna face a trial, going back and forth. This person is not walking free on some kind of desk duty until they figure out what's gonna happen or how they're gonna proceed. He was apprehended, jailed, and charged. End of story. Now he's just waiting for sentencing and go through trial, whatever the case. But he is no longer or unable to roam free and harm anybody else. That's how much Cannon Life matters. Okay? So then we can look at Breonna Taylor and know that she was an upstanding citizen. She worked as a decorated EMT worker. They go into her house unannounced, no knock warrant, shoot her, kill her, and only one person was fired, not jailed and charged, just fired from the police department, while the other two officers have remained with their jobs, just not doing that. They've been kind of designated somewhere else. However, they still have jobs and able to get up every morning, go to said job freely, and go about their business and their daily day. If they want to go on vacation, they probably can too. They probably just can't leave the state, but I'm sure they could go on vacation if they choose to. And therein lies the difference. It's not that we're saying that our lives matter more than someone else's. The problem is that there is no justice when it comes to black lives. Very little justice that when it comes to black lives. So therein lies the difference. Therein lies the difference. It's not that nobody cares about this young 5-year-old losing his life. That is totally disgusting. That's a child. There's no reason why a child should lose their life, an innocent child, due to some sort of violence like that. However, at the same token, there was no reason for that young woman to lose her life violently the way that she did, and these people still walk around free with jobs or able to get a job whenever they feel like it, while it's still being investigated as if it was purposely done or not an accident, which even if it was, you still get charged. You know what I'm saying? So I don't even understand why that's an issue, but it is an issue. And I think, like I said, people miss the mark. Too busy focusing on one thing. And you know what that thing is? The fact that it says black lives. Black. That black part is all that you focused on. Because you're not focused on life matters. Because if you just said life matters, then you would be just as in arms about Breonna Taylor as you would have been about the young man Cannon. And you would have did a moral for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and many others. You would have had tons of morals to add to this moral that you did for Cannon, which is a great thing. I'm not knocking that, but I people are so missing the mark. You're so focused on the color that you missed the whole thing. That's where that bit of, kind of racist hatred comes in at. I mean, whether or not you want to admit it or not, that's where that comes in. And then you say, well, nobody's paying attention to that. This is not getting any media coverage. Why would it get media coverage? He's in jail. He's not roaming free. They're not trying to see if they need to charge him and do an investigation to make sure he's the perpetrator. They arrested the man. Therein lies the difference. I hope that cleared it up for some people. In a new lawsuit claims that the late alleged child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein brought one of his victims to see President Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort when she was just 14 years old. The Daily Beast reports that a woman identified only as Jane Doe filed a lawsuit early this year detailing sexual abuse she alleged endured by the hands of Epstein and his longtime associate, Miss Maxwell, who earlier this year was arrested on sex trafficking charges. Parts of the lawsuit detail a trip taken to Mar-a-Lago back in 1995, which Trump had brought a decade earlier. Doe also claims that Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago when she was only 14. The lawsuit does not accuse Trump of any sexual misconduct, although it does raise questions about what Trump knew of Epstein's nefarious activities. In 2002, Trump praised Epstein in an interview with the New York Magazine and hinted that he was interested in younger women. Terrific guy, he told the magazine. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side, no doubt about it. Alright, so here's this particular story about Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lawsuit that at the time, this 14-year-old girl, Jeffrey Epstein introduced her, took her to Mar-a-Lago, which is President Donald Trump's resort club, and she met Donald Trump there. And just a big mess of privilege, because of course, when you have the privilege, everything you do, even if it is illegal, can be kind of swept under the rug for a time until it becomes exposed. Almost like, everything done in the dark eventually comes to light. And it just happened to be a light moment. And this light has exposed a lot of different people, like Trump, like Bill Clinton, so on and so forth. And all of these people, like Prince Edward of England. So, it's kind of like, okay, well, all right. So Jane Doe filed her lawsuit. She was 14 at the time. I guess now she's been encouraged by what's going on to speak up and be a voice, which is a great thing. At the same time, it exposes the people who have known these things for the longest time and been okay with this behavior. So then it's not surprising, coming from someone where you hear him clear as day say he likes to grab them by the pussy, and they let you kiss him because you're a star. It is not surprising that he would hang out with a creep like Epstein. But because Epstein had money that he stole, speaking of which, if any of you have checked out the Netflix documentary on Jeffrey Epstein, Life of Privilege, you might want to check that out, because he definitely stole a lot of people's money. It is the reason why he was able to obtain so much wealth. But I wonder why nobody came after him when he was stealing, being a hedge fund dealer and stealing these billionaires' money. And my thought, and again, this is just my thought, but my thought is the reason why nobody really came after him for their money once he, took his little piece and ran off, is because he had all entangled them in his little web of sex trafficking, little girls, little boys, probably too, who knows. So much so that he had dirt on all of them. So they did not go so far as to call him out on it, because he would expose them. So to keep them quiet from coming after him for stealing their money, he would invite them to his private island, probably record the whole thing. And when, the people thought, oh yeah, we're good and in the clear, and they figure out, oh yeah, they get the call that some money has been stolen, and they get ready to go after him, he just slides a copy of that tape or them pictures to them, and they shut up and go about their business. Because if he's been stealing money from corporations and companies all this time, closely up until his death, and nobody's ever said anything about him dealing in trafficking young girls, that's crazy. Even when somebody had a story on it early on, and they squashed it because it involved Prince Edward. So I'm just like, wow, the life of privilege. It's something else, isn't it? Too bad we never experience it. The Hill posted footage on Sunday evening. In the clip, Trump visibly reaches for Melania's hand several times as she turns away, opting to hold onto the handrails a little more intensely. But others have pointed out that Melania's skirt had a full frontal slit, and it seems as if it would be grave danger of flying up in front of the press. So she might have not been rejecting Trump's efforts to hold her hand so much as in trying to not let her skirt fly up in front of the press. Either way, if Melania were to leave Trump, she'd probably get a book deal and a podcast out of it. But all right, so here we go with something a little lighter. The story before had the 14-year-old at Mar-a-Lago back in, I believe, 1995, right? 10 years after Donald Trump had bought Mar-a-Lago. So, what I think happened in this whole bit, yeah, as you can see the clip, it looks like she is holding down her skirt from flying as she's walking down the steps because it does have a split in the front part, so she didn't want to flash the cameras. That is definitely very, very possible. But also, my thought is maybe she got a whiff of that particular story that we just talked about earlier while they were on Air Force One, and she was livid about it because he probably lied to her again and said, you know, there's no other story, nothing else out there. And then lo and behold, this shit comes out, and she's like, well, what the hell? What the hell, Donald? And cursing him out. And so, he likes to put on a show for the cameras. So of course, she wasn't having it as usual because she's always swatted his hand, especially when she's not feeling him. She will swat his hand in a minute. So don't touch me. And I just think that was one of those moments. And again, yes, she did have a split in her skirt and she didn't want the thing to fly up. And that's possible. But I mean, don't act all wholesome now. You got your whole tatas and things and spread eagle on Playboy magazine. So there's no need to act all dainty and wholesome now. If your skirt fly up, it fly up. I'm sure you're used to it, honey. So let's not act brand new. Anyway, but I just thought that was really, really funny. No, it was just really, no, in all seriousness, it was just really funny. Because he always tries to emulate that Michelle and Barack kind of affection, and he does not have it because she doesn't see it for him. The only thing she sees is his money, and I think she's over that at this point. I really do. I think she's over it. She probably really knows what the deal is and how much money he really has, and I'm pretty sure she'll walk away pretty soon. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.